My name is Julia Pierce, and I've always been the kind of person people overlook in group photos. You know, the one standing just a little off center, not quite in the spotlight, not quite invisible. Just there. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a house that smelled like fresh linen and oven roasted rosemary chicken. My mother, Monica, loved perfection: white countertops, perfect centerpieces, and children who looked good on paper. That child was never me. I was the older one, the quiet one, the one who read too much and dressed like a background character. My younger sister, Ashley, was the golden girl. From the moment she learned how to pose for a picture, my mom decided she was the one worth showing off. Ashley had it all: charm, charisma, that kind of giggle that made people melt. At family reunions, it was always, "Ashley, you're glowing, darling. Ashley, your Instagram is so fun. Julia, what was it you do again? Logistics?" I used to try. I really did. I got straight A's. I entered science fairs. I even built a small app in high school that helps students track assignment deadlines. And my dad? He called it cute. Ashley once uploaded a 30-second skincare reel that got 18,000 likes. He called that brilliant. By the time I turned 28, I had moved to Seattle, built a career in supply chain analytics, and worked my way up to senior strategist at a major logistics firm. I didn't post much online. I didn't wear makeup, but I had real results: streamlined delivery models, efficiency jumps, and two separate consulting invitations from Fortune 500 companies. No one in my family ever asked what I did. Not really. Not until 2 weeks ago. It started with a phone call from my mother. "We're planning your father's retirement celebration," she said. 35 years at Hartwell. Can you help?" "Sure," I said, a little surprised. "You want me to help plan it?" No, we've got the planning handled. But the budget's a bit tight, and I know you've done well for yourself. Could you contribute?" I didn't hesitate. I wired $3,000 next morning. No questions asked. He's my father, I thought. No matter what happened growing up, he worked hard. He deserved a good send-off. I imagined something small but meaningful: a slideshow of memories, a simple speech. Maybe, just maybe this time, he'd look at me like I mattered. The invitation came a few days later, in the form of a forwarded email. The venue: Grand Liberty Hotel, downtown Portland. Elegant, classy, definitely not budget level. It was signed, "Hosted with Love" by Monica and Ashley Pierce. I blinked. No mention of me. No Julia on the header. Not even a sponsored by her. But I told myself it didn't matter. This was Dad's moment. The day of the event, I wore a simple navy blue dress and arrived 10 minutes early. The lobby was warm and golden lit, filled with soft string music and waiters offering wine. A host greeted me at the entrance. "Are you with the Pierce party?" he asked. "Yes." He scanned the guest list, then pointed. "You're in the secondary reserved row, just past the center aisle, right behind the family seating." I paused. "Sorry. Is there a mistake? I'm Donald Pierce's daughter." "Oh, right," Ashley said. Family was front row. "Maybe double check with her?" Ashley said. "Right." I nodded and smiled. I didn't cause a scene. I just walked to my seat, quietly, and sat down behind a row of white orchids that completely blocked the podium view. From that spot, I watched everything unfold. Ashley floated through the crowd like a champagne bubble, laughing, hugging guests, wearing a floor-length cream satin gown. My mother stood near her, beaming, introducing her like this was Ashley's wedding, not Dad's retirement. "This is Ashley," she told one of Dad's coworkers. "She's a rising star in media. Just hit 250,000 followers. This party is the perfect opportunity to network for her new collab." I stared at the glass in my hand. It shimmered with pink wine I hadn't tasted. That's when I knew. This wasn't a retirement party. It was a stage, and I had paid for the lights. The toast began around 7:30 p.m. A live string quartet played softly in the corner, and the lights dimmed just enough to create a warm, golden glow across the room. It was the kind of ambiance my mother adored: tasteful, filtered, presentable. Dad stood near the podium, looking proud and slightly overwhelmed, dressed in a new dark gray suit I'd never seen before. The crowd applauded as Ashley walked up to introduce him. "Yes, Ashley." She stepped to the microphone like it was her stage. The MC gave her the mic without hesitation. "Good evening, everyone," she began, smiling like a pageant queen. "We're gathered here tonight to celebrate an incredible man, my father, Donald Pierce. The hardest worker I know, and someone who raised us with strength, integrity, and vision. Us. I wanted to laugh. I had memories too, but they weren't framed in gold. They were quiet mornings when he forgot my birthday. Report cards left on the counter, never opened. College acceptance letters tossed on the table without a word. But Ashley? She once landed a brand deal for herbal shampoo, and Dad called the whole family to celebrate. The room hung on every word she spoke. Dad has been a role model not just to his family, but to everyone at Hartwell Technologies. His leadership has shaped the company culture. His vision has guided entire teams to success. She glanced at our father, then turned back to the mic. And I hope to carry his legacy forward, not in operations or engineering, of course, light laughter, but in how I approach my audience, with authenticity, consistency, and heart. Applause. I sat silently, staring at the floral centerpiece in front of me, a mix of hydrangeas and lilies I was pretty sure I had paid for. Then Dad took the stage. He looked a little uncomfortable with the attention, which was unusual, but he smiled, cleared his throat, and began. "It's been a long road," he said. 35 years at Hartwell. That's not just a job, it's a lifetime. He thanked his managers, his assistants, the janitor who'd always brought him an extra coffee. He even thanked the interns, by name. But not once did he say mine. Not a whisper of Julia. Not a mention of my other daughter who's made her own mark. Nothing. He closed with a tribute to Ashley. And of course, to Ashley, who's doing amazing things online. The world is watching her grow. I couldn't be more proud. I swallowed hard. It wasn't the pain of exclusion that hurt most. It was how normal it felt. Like being forgotten was just another course on the menu. As people clapped, a waiter leaned over and asked if I wanted more wine. I declined. Then I noticed something strange. Near the entrance, a man had just arrived, late, and not exactly blending in. He wore a navy suit, tailored but relaxed, and carried no entourage, just a quiet presence and an alert gaze. He looked around the room once, then spotted my father and smiled faintly. I recognized him instantly. Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Hartwell Technologies. He wasn't supposed to be here. Dad had mentioned once during a rare phone call that the new CEO's too busy for events like this. But here he was, present, sharp, observant, and heading toward the reserved front row. Ashley turned around and her smile widened. Mom gasped softly, immediately adjusting her posture and smoothing her hair. But Ethan Caldwell didn't walk over to either of them. He stopped, looked across the room, and walked directly toward me. I sat up straighter, suddenly unsure of what to say. He stopped at my table. "Julia Pierce?" he asked, voice low but certain. I blinked. "Yes?" He smiled, not with warmth, but with recognition. "We exchanged emails last quarter. You submitted the strategic logistics report that helped us avert the distribution delay in Q3. It took me a moment to process. I had done that. Through an external consultancy project. He had read it. He knew. That report was brilliant, he said. I've been hoping to meet the mind behind it. Didn't realize you were, well, part of this family." I said nothing. The entire front table was now staring. My father, my mother, Ashley, all frozen. Caldwell turned to them slowly and gave a polite nod. "Lovely event. But I came because I heard Julia might be here. I wanted to say thank you publicly." I sat there, stunned. Not because he thanked me, but because this was the first time in my life someone had said, "I see you." The silence after Mr. Caldwell's words wasn't loud, it was heavy. You could feel it in the way forks stopped midair. And how Ashley's smile faltered just slightly, her hand still half lifted toward her glass. My mother's face remained frozen in a tight expression that didn't know whether to twist into pride or panic. And my father, he didn't move. Caldwell looked back at me. "You never responded to our follow-up proposal," he added, calm and conversational. "I wasn't sure it was appropriate," I replied quietly, my voice somehow steady. It was a favor project. I wasn't expecting recognition. That's what made it all the more impressive. He nodded, then turned and walked toward the podium. No fanfare, no announcement, just a man with quiet power and the full attention of the room now hanging on him. He tapped the mic gently. I know this evening is about honoring Donald Pierce and his incredible career, he said, scanning the crowd. But before the night ends, I'd like to take a brief moment to acknowledge a contribution that may have gone unnoticed. He paused, intentionally, precisely. 3 months ago, Hartwell Technologies faced a near collapse in our West Coast operations. A major delay in our internal supply chain was threatening a multi-million-dollar contract. Our internal teams were stumped. People leaned in. The solution came from an unexpected source, a freelance analysis delivered anonymously through a consulting partner. That solution didn't just patch the leak, it rebuilt the pipe. A few heads turned toward me. Tonight, he said, with clarity that cut like glass, I discovered that the analyst behind that rescue was Julia Pierce, your daughter, your sister, and perhaps the most strategic mind we've encountered this year. The applause started with 2 people, then 5, then the entire room. Some clapped politely, some clapped with real admiration. Some, especially those who knew exactly how close Hartwell had come to disaster, clapped with open awe. I stayed seated. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just looked down at my hands, resting still on my lap, and thought, this is what being seen feels like. Not as decoration, not as afterthought, but as something undeniable. After the applause faded, Caldwell left the podium with a brief nod to my father. Dad stood as if on cue, taking the mic again. But for a second, just a fraction, I saw it. That crack, that uncertain flicker in his eyes, like a man who realized the foundation he'd built was missing a brick, a very important one. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, he said. That wasn't expected. Neither was your daughter's report, Caldwell said, smiling, which is exactly why I hope she considers leading some of our external initiatives in the coming quarter. And just like that, the narrative shifted. The center of gravity in the room moved, and it landed on me. I could see it in my mother's face. Her eyes darted back and forth between guests, calculating, recalibrating. The smile she forced on barely reached her cheeks. She grabbed Ashley's hand as if reminding the room, this is still the one I brought here to shine. But the spotlight had already changed direction, and it wasn't one you could redirect with charm or Instagram. It was truth. When dinner was served, I barely touched the food. I wasn't hungry, not in the literal sense. But there was something deeply nourishing about that moment. For once, I didn't feel like I had to make small talk to justify my presence. I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to fight for space. The air around me no longer felt tight. A colleague of my father's, a man I hadn't met before, stopped by my table. You're the Julia who fixed the Q3 model? He asked. I nodded. I read your work. Damn sharp. You ever consider leading workshops? Not yet. Well, you should. That was top tier. He walked away without waiting for a follow-up, just left me with a look of genuine respect. It was subtle, but it was new. At the front table, Ashley still smiled, still posed. But there was a tension now, a crack in the facade. She was no longer the only name people were whispering. Dinner carried on like nothing had happened, but everyone knew something had. The air had changed. You could hear it in the lowered voices. You could see it in the glances thrown in my direction, then quickly pulled away. Even the servers moved a little differently now. One of them, a girl no older than 22, leaned over when clearing my plate and whispered, "That was really cool, what he said about you." I smiled. "Thank you." She smiled back, and for a second, I saw my younger self, the version who used to wait tables during college breaks, carrying trays through crowded rooms full of people who never once asked her name. The program continued, but the energy never quite recovered. A slideshow played. Photos of my dad through the decades, wearing a hard hat, cutting a ribbon, holding baby Ashley in a yellow sundress. There were no photos of me. Not one. Not even from holidays. Not even in the background. It wasn't just an oversight. It was a pattern. And now, it was obvious to everyone. After dessert, people began mingling again. I stood to stretch my legs, drifting near the corner of the room where a few guests were chatting about industry trends. Then I heard my name. "Julia," my mother called out, her tone bright but brittle. "Could I talk to you for a moment?" I turned. She stood just outside the ballroom doors, her smile fixed too tightly. I followed her into the hallway. The quiet felt colder than inside. That little moment earlier, she began. With Mr. Caldwell? That was unexpected. Was it? I asked, neutral. Of course. It just shifted the tone of the evening. This was supposed to be about your father. And now people are acting like it's about you. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. She crossed her arms. Listen, I'm not trying to take anything away from what you've done. We're proud of you. But tonight wasn't the place. I exhaled slowly. You mean the party I paid for? Her jaw tightened. Julia, let's not turn this into something ugly. I'm not. I just didn't expect to be erased again. And when I wasn't, you looked like it ruined your night. That's not true. Then what is? She didn't answer. The silence stretched too long until a third voice cut in, sharp, defensive. Wow. You really made this all about you, huh? I turned. Ashley. She stepped forward, heels clicking against the marble, arms folded like she'd rehearsed this confrontation in front of a mirror. He came to see you, and now half the guests are whispering about you. This wasn't your moment, Julia. This was Dad's. And yet, I said, voice even, I was the only one who wasn't mentioned or invited to speak or shown in a single photo. Because you've never been involved in the family, she snapped. You chose your own path, remember? Career first. You left. I left, I said softly, because staying meant disappearing. That hit harder than I expected. Ashley's face tensed, her eyes narrowing. You think you're better than us now? No, I replied. I just stopped pretending that being ignored was normal. She stared at me. My mother looked back and forth between us like a referee who'd lost the rule book. I didn't wait for another line of defense. I turned and walked back into the ballroom, where the lights had dimmed again and the soft music resumed. As I passed by the podium, Mr. Caldwell caught my eye. He gave me the smallest nod, one that didn't say congrats, but something quieter, like, you didn't need to say a word. The truth handled itself. I made my way back to my seat. But just as I sat down, I noticed something odd. My father was no longer at the head table. I found him by the balcony. It was a narrow stone terrace just off the ballroom, barely wide enough for two people to stand side by side. From there, you could see the Portland skyline, hazy and gold lit under a soft spring evening. My father stood with his back to me, arms folded, gaze fixed somewhere between the clouds and the edge of the city. For a moment, I considered turning away. This was not a man who apologized. He was a man of routine, of spreadsheets and efficiency. He ran our household like a quarterly report, measured praise, zero surplus affection, and a heavy focus on performance. But tonight had cracked something, and cracks, no matter how hairline, let the light in. I stepped onto the balcony. He didn't turn. Mr. Caldwell said, "You left a real impression," he said. His voice was even. Careful. I didn't know you two had crossed paths. I didn't know he was your CEO, I replied. We worked through a partner firm. He never saw my last name. He nodded, still not looking at me. It was good work, he said after a pause. Everyone at Hartwell is talking about it. That's nice to hear. Another pause. Then I wasn't expecting him to speak. Neither was I. The silence settled between us again, awkward, but not empty. Like two people standing on opposite cliffs, watching the same river. Then, without turning, he said, "You've done well, Julia." 4 words. Simple. Quiet. But they hit like thunder. Because in 33 years, I had never heard them. Not when I got into college. Not when I earned my MBA while working full-time. Not even when I paid off my student loans without asking anyone for a cent. Not once. I didn't say thank you. Instead, I asked, why was I never enough? He turned then, finally looked at me. His face was older than I remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. His eyes didn't hold anger, just weight. It's not that you weren't enough, he said. It's that you didn't need us. You figured things out. You didn't ask for help. You just handled it. I blinked. So, because I didn't need you, you erased me? I didn't erase you. No? I said, my voice sharper now. You thanked the janitor tonight, the interns, even the bartender, but not your daughter. Not even once. You put together an entire slideshow, and I wasn't in a single photo. His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I continued. You raised Ashley to shine, to be seen. You raised me to be silent. And when I stopped playing along, you called it distance, independence. But let's be honest, if Mr. Caldwell hadn't said my name tonight, would you have? He didn't answer, and that was my answer. I let the silence hang. Then I said the words I never thought I'd be brave enough to say. I stopped waiting for you to see me. I built something without your applause, without your spotlight. And tonight, when someone else finally noticed, you looked surprised. But I wasn't. He exhaled. You're right, he said after a long pause. I didn't know how to raise you, not the way you needed. I saw you doing fine, and I assumed that meant you were fine. That you didn't. That you didn't feel what I thought Ashley needed. I stayed quiet. But that doesn't mean I wasn't proud, he added, his voice almost breaking. I just didn't say it. I didn't know how to. For the first time in my life, I believed him. Not because it was what I wanted to hear, but because it sounded like something he'd never said aloud before. I nodded. Thank you for saying it now. I should have said it sooner. You should have, I said. But at least now I don't need it. He looked at me, a little stunned. That's what growing up is, I added, realizing that some apologies come late, and some never come. But either way, we stop waiting and start choosing ourselves. Behind us, the music in the ballroom had changed, softer now. Less performance, more ease. We stood there for another moment, not as father and daughter finding resolution, but as two people acknowledging the space between them. And for once, that was enough. When I returned to the ballroom, the room was quieter. The crowd had thinned. People were starting to gather their coats, exchange goodbyes, slip into Ubers. The formal program was over, but the tension in the air still hung like smoke after a fire. I passed a few tables. Some guests nodded politely. Others offered cautious smiles, the kind that say, we heard everything, but don't want to admit they were listening. At the center of it all stood my mother, rigid as ever. She was speaking with an older couple I vaguely remembered from childhood holidays, acquaintances from my dad's side of the family, both of them wearing identical expressions, shock disguised as civility. It was such a lovely speech from Mr. Caldwell, the woman said, glancing toward me. We had no idea Julia was doing so well, the man added. You must be incredibly proud. My mother stiffened. Yes, well. She keeps to herself, she said, forcing a laugh. Always has. I didn't stop walking. I didn't need to. That moment, the shifting tone in her voice, the falter in her certainty, told me more than any direct apology ever could. Ashley was standing by the window, scrolling through her phone with a blank look. She didn't notice me until I was nearly beside her. Hey, I said softly. She looked up, startled. You okay? She nodded, then shrugged. It's whatever. I didn't ask for what happened tonight. I know, she said, too quickly. But you didn't stop it either. No, I said. I didn't. Because for once, I wanted to let the truth speak louder than my silence. She turned back to the glass. He chose you, you know. Caldwell, the crowd. Even Dad, maybe. Everyone turned toward you. They didn't turn away from you, I said. They just realized I existed too. She didn't reply. And for once, I didn't feel the need to fill the silence. 15 minutes later, I grabbed my coat from the staff rack. I'd chosen not to sit through the final photos or small talk. I'd done my part. I'd stayed long enough. As I crossed the lobby, a voice called out behind me. Julia? I turned. It was Mr. Caldwell again. Heading out? He asked. Yeah. Long day. He smiled. I meant what I said earlier. We'd love to bring you in to lead an external strategy panel. It's not full-time, but it's high impact. You'd be shaping the next phase of how we think. I blinked. Was this real? Why me? I asked. Because you see patterns where others see problems, he said. And because you don't chase attention, which makes people want to follow you. He offered his card. I took it. Let me know, he said. And congratulations. Not for tonight. For all the nights, no one clapped. He turned and walked off, leaving me standing under the golden lights of the hotel entrance. Outside, the air was crisp. Not cold, just fresh. like the kind of air you breathe right before everything changes, but only you know it's happening. I looked up at the night sky and exhaled. I didn't come to this party to reclaim anything. I came to let go of what was never mine to begin with, the need to be approved, accepted, praised in ways that only came when I was invisible. I opened my rideshare app. A black car pulled up. I got in. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the building, because this time I wasn't leaving in disappointment. I was leaving in clarity. And that, I realized, was worth more than applause. The morning after the party, I woke up to sunlight on my pillow and silence in the apartment. Not the empty kind, the peaceful kind. I didn't rush to check my phone. No urge to scroll through texts or wait for someone, anyone, from my family to reach out, because I already knew they wouldn't. And strangely, that was okay. Instead, I made coffee, poured it slowly, watched the steam curl in the air, let it fill the kitchen with that warm, rich smell that always made me feel rooted. I sat at the table with a blank notebook and let myself write. Not a strategy plan, not a report, just a few words that had been sitting in my chest for years. I am not a placeholder. I am not the backup plan. I am not the daughter you remember only when it's convenient. I am Julia. I am enough, and I'm not waiting anymore. I closed the notebook, and I smiled. A little while later, my phone did buzz, but it wasn't from my mother, or Ashley, or even my father. It was a message from Mr. Caldwell, no pressure. But the offer's real. And you've already earned it, even if no one clapped before last night. I replied with a simple, let's talk Monday, and then I closed my phone again. Around noon, I went for a walk. No makeup, no schedule, just me, breathing, existing. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like more than enough. I passed by a park where kids were flying kites and couples were laying on picnic blankets. I sat on a bench under a tree and watched a little girl try to balance on a scooter, falling once, twice, then finally staying upright. No applause, no cameras, just her. Trying, learning, becoming. It hit me. That had been me, too. All these years, building myself in the quiet, failing, getting back up, becoming. That evening, I got a call from my father. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally at peace. I let it go to voicemail. When I had checked it an hour later, the message was brief. Just checking in. I hope you're okay. I know we got some things wrong, but I saw you last night. Really saw you. I just wanted you to know that. I didn't cry. I didn't replay it 10 times hoping for more, because for once, I didn't need more. In the following weeks, I accepted the consulting role with Hartwell, not because it validated me, but because it challenged me, because I knew what I could bring to the table. And now, so did they. My relationship with my family didn't magically transform. My mother stayed distant, carefully phrased. Ashley went back to curated selfies and brand campaigns. But something had shifted, not in them, in me. They no longer had the power to define me. I began calling my own name louder in my own life. I updated my home office. I traveled more. I started mentoring younger women who had been told, "You're strong, you don't need attention." And I told them what I wish someone had told me at 23. Being strong doesn't mean staying silent. It means knowing when to speak and when to walk away. One quiet afternoon, months later, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name, handwritten. Inside was a single photo. Me, age 9, standing in front of a school science fair poster, smiling, forgotten. But in this photo, I was finally centered. Taped to the back was a sticky note. Found this in a drawer. Thought you might want it, Dad. I placed it in a frame. Not because I needed proof I existed, but because now I knew I always had. Final words, I wasn't written into the speech. I wasn't in the slideshow. I wasn't on the family toast list. But I showed up anyway, and the world remembered, not because I shouted, but because I stayed long enough for silence to speak.